Good evening, everyone. Today, I'll be discussing how to approach a patient who is having hirsutism. So, hirsutism is a very important clinical problem because it affects around about approximately 5 to 10% of female population. It is associated with significant emotional distress and depression and is generally an indication that patient is having some underlying endocrine disorder. So first, let's discuss about what are the terms that are associated with hirsutism. Firstly, what is the definition of hirsutism? It is excessive terminal hair that appears in a male pattern, that is excessive hair in androgen dependent areas in females. And then a very important score that come across in approach to the patients with hirsutism is Ferryman-Galloway score. It is a modified Ferriman-Galloway score, which is standard gold standard for evaluating the patients of hirsutism. And in this 9 body areas which are sensitive to androgens, they are assigned a score from 0 to 4. 0 means that the patient is having no hairs, and 4 is that is the patient is frankly virilized. And these separate scores, they are total summed up and which provide us hormonal score. Then another definition is local hair growth. What we mean by local hair growth is these are the unwanted localized hair growth in the absence of abnormal hirsutism score. The patient important hirsutism. It means that unwanted sexual growth to any degree that is causing sufficient distress for the female to seek additional treatment. That is that on evaluation the patient is not having significant virilization or hirsutism, but she is worried about the hair growth sometimes present over the chin area, that the patient if for that a patient it is important that these unwanted sexual hair growth they are causing distress to the patient. Then is hyperandrogenism. The hyperandrogenism is generally used for the purpose of the guidelines, which is defined as clinical features that result from increased androgen production or their action. Then let's come the idiopathic hirsutism. It means that the hirsutism is present but without hyperandrogenemia or any other signs or symptoms which are indicated of hyperandrogenic endocrine disorder. This is very common, especially in our areas, that idiopathic hirsutism, that the patient is having hairs, facial hairs, but the testosterone levels or ultrasound, they are all normal, and the other androgenic disorders when they have been excluded. In that cases, we give the diagnosis of idiopathic hirsutism. Now, what is the pathogenesis of hirsutism? This androgen dependent hair growth, it depends upon the levels of testosterone levels. Somehow they may indicate, if the levels are more, that it may indicate that the patient is having severe virilization. Duration, that is very important. Some of, because if the patients like in PCOS, idiopathic hirsutism and or non-classic CAH, the duration is over the years, the patient is that the over the years it is presenting, whereas in the patients who are having tumors, androgenic or ovarian tumors, in this the duration is less or within a month. Then the 5-alpha reductase activity and androgen receptor sensitivity, all they are helps is the pathogenesis of hirsutism. Coming on to the etiology, so very common is the PCOS. About 75% of the patients they are having the PCOS, and it is generally of the peripubertal onset of symptoms like oligomenorrhea, obesity, or PCO ovaries on ultrasound. So the another common is non-classic CH. It again has similar presentation to PCOS, but the progesterone, that is 17 OHP levels, they are high and is generally commonly seen in certain ethnic groups. So these non-classic CH, again, it also has the peripubertal onset of the symptoms and the family history is present in these cases. The uncommon causes of hirsutism is the classic 21 hydroxylase deficiency. It is generally diagnosed during infancy. The patient is presenting with the ambiguous genitalia, so it is not very difficult to diagnose the classic CH. Then we have the androgen secreting ovarian tumors like Sertoli cells, Sertoli lytic cell tumors, granulosa theca cells tumors. They are generally present during the third decade or later, or especially in the post-menopausal females, and their symptoms are rapidly progressive hirsutism and virilization. Then we have the androgen secreting tumors. Again, these patients they present with just virilization, and they can have the mixed picture of Cushing and virilization. Then is the ovarian hypothecosis. Generally, onset is during the third decade. Generally, in the postmenopausal, very rapidly progressive hirsutism and virilization. Then severe insulin resistance syndromes. In this, the patient presents with virilization, amenorrhea, infertility, and over shows the pictures of hypothecosis. Then we have that. Then we have to rule out the other causes of hirsutism like Cushing syndrome or the drugs, like if the patient is sometimes taking testosterone or DHA, DHEAs, they may also cause hirsutism. Then we have the acromegaly, which generally shows the pictures is that there is enlargement of hands and feet, which results in, and the patient may present with headache, visual field defects. So the most common still the etiology is the PCO and non-classic CAH. Coming on to the Farman-Galloway score, it is most commonly used method to quantify the hair growth. There are 9 androgen-dependent sites which are graded from 0 to 4. If the score is more than 8, it is considered as abnormal. If it is between 8 to 15, it is usually considered as mild. 16 to 25, moderate hirsutism. More than 25 score, it is severe hirsutism. But in some ethnic populations, like for Mediterranean people, Hispanics, or Middle Eastern females, if the score is between 9 to 10, it is considered as abnormal. But for Asian females, if it is even is more than 10, more than 2, it is again considered as abnormal. So this score, it helps in assessing the severity of hirsutism at the baseline and at the follow-up visits to monitor to see the response of our pharmacologic and direct hair removal therapies. So this is the Farman-Galloway score, which helps in grading the hirsutism in the females. So there are 9 sites, that is the upper lip, around the chin, chest, and then there will be upper abdomen, lower abdomen, and over the upper arms and thighs, then the back, upper back, and lower back. These areas, it is like they are androgen dependent areas, and then they will do the grading. So if it is more than 8, we need to evaluate the patients for the cause of hirsutism. So now, what are the goals? What we want to achieve, and what do we want to evaluate, and what are the goals for these patients? So the goals are that we have to distinguish whether it is true hirsutism from the other causes of bothersome hair growth. And we have to see if there is a history of any drug intake that is causing the excessive hair growth, like minoxidil or anabolic steroids. And then we have to want to identify the severe causes of hirsutism, like androgen secreting tumors, whether ovarian or adrenal or ovarian hypothecosis. PCOS, again, we have to identify because it presents around 75 to 80% of cases. Non-classic CH, it is generally less than 5% of the females, but still we need to rule out, and we have to identify the other causes, other endocrine disorders which can present as a hirsutism, like Cushing and acromegaly. And we have to determine the degree of emotional distress which is caused by these excessive hair, as this has important implications for the treatment. Now, during clinical assessment, we have to take the history, which should include what was the age at the onset when the patient noticed the increased facial hair growth or the body hair. What is the rate of progression? If there are any associated signs and symptoms like acne, galactorrhea, and what is the degree of virilization? We have to see the age of onset of menstrual cycles, whether all this scenario was prepubertal or postpubertal. What is the pattern of cycle, that menstrual cycles, whether the patient is having menorrhagia, oligomenorrhea, hypomenorrhea, or amenorrhea. Then we have to see for the features of Cushing and acromegaly, or the history of any kind of medications that the patient is taking that is causing hirsutism, and the family history. So let's discuss each of these scenarios. First, coming on to the age, why it is important to include to see the age during his investigation, during taking history taking, because the PCOS, it is typically a peripubertal onset of hirsutism. Again, non-classic CH and idiopathic hirsutism also has similar age of onset, and but the androgen secreting tumors and ovarian hyperthyroidosis, they develop during the third decade of life or later or postmenopausal. So both these diagnoses, that is androgen secreting tumors and ovarian hyperthyroidosis, they generally present after menopause, but sometimes they can do occur before also. Now coming on to the whether the patient is having stable or progressive hair growth. So PCOS, the pattern of the hair growth is variable and it changes over the years. Again, the non-classic and idiopathic hirsutism, again they have the hair growth pattern is again variable. But the androgen secreting tumors, they have this very short history, and they have the recent onset, short duration, just generally less than, and very rapidly progressive hirsutism. And they generally presents with virilization. That is, they can have the features of frontal balding, clypedomegaly, increased muscle mass, deepening of the voice, and all these signs of virilization, they generally seen when the testosterone levels are severely elevated, that is over the more than 150 nanogram DL. So again, the ovarian hyperthyroidosis, androgen secreting tumors, they can present with virilization. So the emotional distress and depression, it is associated. The hirsutism, we have seen that our patients, especially the young females, they are associated with significant emotional distress and depression. So and even the PCOS, they are associated with mood disorders, and they are high risk of eating disorders, for example, binge eating. Then the very important is the menstrual history, whether the patient is having oligomenorrhea, amenorrhea, and the presence of menstrual dysfunction, it does suggest PCOS, but it can occur with the patients with any kind of, the patient is having any kind of which the testosterone levels are higher, and like an ovarian androgen secreting tumors also can present with menstrual dysfunction. But the idiopathic hirsutism, whenever we label the patient to have idiopathic hirsutism, these patients, they have regular menstrual cycles, but increased facial or body hair, but cycles are normal. Another important is family history, because both the PCOS and non-classic CH or CH, they have a strong family history. So the family history of hirsutism, acne, or menstrual irregularity, or infertility, or history of early cardiovascular disease, obesity, all this suggests that the patient might have the possibility of PCO. The weight history, the obese people, they are more, they have increased androgen production and increased clearance rates, and each of which they can aggravate hirsutism and increases, because obesity as such can have results in menstrual irregularity and can have increased facial hairs or hirsutism. And PCO, generally they are obese, but still we do have the patient lean PCO, which can present with menstrual irregularity and hirsutism. The ethnicity, most of the Asian and Native American females, they have little body hair, while the Mediterranean women, they have substantial greater quantities of body hair. So even the Asian females with few periareal hairs, they warrant the diagnosis of further evaluation, whereas the Mediterranean women with some hair growth on upper lip might be considered as normal. So coming on to the medication history, we do need to take the history of intake of testosterone or DHEAs, or sometimes, because we have seen that some like they are testosterone or DHEAs, sometimes they are given to the patients for the management of sexual dysfunction, so which can result in increased facial hairs. And again, the valproate has been associated with development of PCO. So then other endocrine disorders which are associated with hirsutism, they need to be ruled out. So the females with the non-classic CH, they generally have similar presentation with PCO, but the clue lies in the ethnicity, and sometimes the non-classic CH, it is more common in Mediterranean, Hispanic, and Jewish females. So the family history of irregular menses and hirsutism may be present in females with non-classic CH. So summarizing the history point, So if the familial is like LOCA, that is non-classic CH, PCO, and idiopathic system, they generally are familial. If the onset is pubertal, the diagnosis clinches towards the non-classic CH and PCO. Slow progressive hirsutism again points towards the non-classic CH and PCO. If the Menarchean cycles, it is normal in idiopathic hirsutism. Menarche is normal, but menstrual cycles are abnormal. That indicates a non-classic CH. Coming on to the physical examination, we have to see the evidence of virilization, whether it is true hirsutism. We have to assess its severity. We have to see the amount of virilization, that is deepening of voice, temporal or crown balding, increased muscle mass, and cryptomegaly. Females with virilization, they are likely to have serious causes of their hirsutism. Either they can have androgen secreting tumors or ovarian hypothyrosis. The other important findings that we know to see in these patients are acne, seborrhea, acanthosis nigricans, abdominal striae, thin skin, or bruising to rule out Cushing. We have to see the BMI, whether the patient fits into obese or lean patients. Then the pattern of fat distribution to rule out the Cushing. Then we can do the abdominal and pelvic examination to see if there is any kind of mass can be palpated, to if they do, which can signify any androgen secreting tumor is there. Coming on to the biochemical testing, very important aspect is we have established that the patient is having true hirsutism, his the modified FG score is more than 10, then we need to in such cases we need to do the biochemical testing. Like first and foremost, we have to do the serum testosterone levels. So the total testosterone levels is the drug of is the treatment is the test that we want for any kind of degree of hirsutism. That is done by the LCMS, and if the levels are between the normal range of testosterone in females is between 45 to 60. If the levels are more than 60, that indicates the patient is having hyperandrogenism, and if the concentration is more than 50, we have to rule out any kind of androgen secreting tumors. Coming on to the next line of investigation is the 17-OHP that is done at 8 a.m. And generally it is done in high-risk females, but still we do in all our patients to find out if there any kind of non-classic CH, if we are able to pick it up. So if the patient is having cycles are regular, in those cases we have to do on the follicular phase of the cycle, that is on the day 2 or day 3. And if the patient is amenorrheic, in those cases, any time of any day, we can do the 17-OHP levels. If it is more than 200 in the follicular phase, that confirms the diagnosis. If it is if it is less than 200, that is between 2 to 10, in those cases, we need to do the ACTS stimulation test. Then come the free testosterone levels that we have frequently seen that the physicians, they do advise for free testosterone levels. But as such, we are against the free testosterone levels because it is very difficult to measure. It is a very delicate test. It has to be done by the equilibrium dialysis. And so it has to be performed in very specialty lab. So it is better to get the total testosterone levels rather than free testosterone levels. Then serum DHEAS levels that are mildly elevated in the patients of PCO. And if it is more than 800, then we need to rule out any kind of tumor. Pelvic ultrasonography, coming on to the imaging. So pelvic ultrasonography plays a very important role because it helps. It's recommended in various guidelines that we'll be discussing later. So the ovarian androgen, and because we can suspect any kind of ovarian androgen secreting tumor, if it is suspected, then we are able to find out. And if ovarian hypertrichosis, they will show the bilateral increase in ovarian stroma. And in PCO, they generally have the appearance that they have more than 12 follicles, antral follicles, and their size is between 2 to 9 mm per ovary. And plus or minus if the ovarian volume is more than 10. If it is significant, then it fulfills the diagnosis of PCO. Adrenal imaging is generally indicated in the females who have markedly elevated testosterone levels and ultrasound is negative, and which DHEAS levels are more than 8 microgram per DL, more than 800 microgram per DL. In those patients, CT adrenal is indicated. So the biochemical testing that we have to do during as the patient of hirsutism present is total testosterone levels, 17-OHP. and then DHEA levels if the testosterone is more than 150, then TSH and prolactin to rule out the secondary causes of PCO, and dexamethasone suppression test if we are suspecting Cushing syndrome, and ACTS simulation test if we are suspecting non-classic CH. So these are the diagnoses that these are the proposed diagnostic criteria for the PCO. So we have the NIH criteria, Rotterdam criteria, and AES. So in NIH criteria that was given in 1990, in this they said that all are required. That is, the patient should present with menstrual irregularity or that is due to oligo or an evolution, and they can have they should have the features of biochemical or features of hyperandrogenism, and other diagnoses should be excluded. Whereas right in Rotterdam criteria, they said that at least two should be fulfilled, whether the patient is having clinically or biochemically hyperandrogenemia or ultrasound showing the PCO. So this is a flow chart. If we have the perimenopausal woman who is presenting with a hirsutism and there is no evidence of virilization, in those patients, first we have to rule out any kind of history of any kind of medications. And if there is no history of any kind of medications and patient is having irregular menstrual cycles, then we have to get the biochemical testing. That is the serum testosterone level, 17-OHP, and prolactin and TSH and FSH to evaluate to whether the patient is having PCO or any other cause. So if the testosterone levels are more than 150, and in that case, we have to rule out the other causes of androgen secreting tumor or hypothecosis. If this androgen testosterone, if the 17-OHP levels are more than 200, then we have to rule out the non-classic CH. So coming on to the treatment, we have the pharmacological treatment and non-pharmacological treatment. Non-pharmacological means they must be considered in all the patient either as only treatment or as an adjuvant to the drug therapy. So the non-pharmacological treatment, we have the direct hair removal methods like photoablation or waxing, or patients having the electrolysis can be done, or the patient we can, for women who desire rapid response to photoablation, we can add the aflorathin ointment, a topical cream. So because the majority of the patient with hirsutism who are seeking for the fertility, in those cases, firstly we have to who are not seeking the infertility. In those patients, the first drug of choice is the OCPs. Because the advantage of OCP is that they help in suppressing the LH hormone secretions. They decreases the testosterone levels by increasing the hepatic production of sex hormone binding globulin, which results in reduction of testosterone production, and even the androgenic progesterones all helps in increasing the metabolic clearance of the testosterone. So the effect of OCP, they are evident only after the 6 months. Maximum of the time they require 9 to 12 months of the therapy, because that is the duration of hair growth cycle. So now considering for the OCPs, there are no clinical, it has been seen that all OCPs, whether they are containing cypertron acetate or DSP, they are all equally effective. But we have to use the OCPs that contains the minimum amount of progesterone that are androgenic, so as to lower the embolic risk. So we have so the patient who hirsutism who are at higher risk of venous thromboembolism, especially those who are obese, or their age is more than 39 years, it is better to use the levonorgestrel, and we have to use the lowest amount of ethinyl estradiol, that is usually less than 20 micrograms, and the patients and with the low risk of progesterone. So ovarian androgen suppression may be similar with all the OCPs which contain the different doses of ethinyl estradiol. So various anti-androgens that are available, we have the cypertron acetate, spironolactone, finasteride, and flutamide. It is available. We generally do not use the flutamide because of the hepatotoxicity, and the spironolactone, finasteride, they are equally effective in reducing the hirsutism. So the other drugs, metformin is not indicated for the treatment of hirsutism. It is generally indicated in the patients who have insulin resistance or obese patients. Other insulin sensitizers like pioglitazone, rosiglitazone, they do not have any effect on hirsutism. The other topical drug that is available to us is the aflorathin. It irreversibly inhibits the ornithine decarboxylase, which is the rate-limiting step for follicular polynineases. It is available in the dose of a percentage of 13.9%. It helps in reducing the growth and appearance of the facial hairs and helps in improving the quality of life. The results generally take noticeable results are seen after 6 to 8 weeks, and after discontinuation of treatment, hair returns to pre-treatment levels after 8 weeks. Generally, the side effects with topical ointment is that they can cause itching or dry glands. Thank you so much.